After months of setbacks, unexpected faults, and repairs that never seemed to stick, Matt Armstrong's Bugatti Veyron rebuild had reached a breaking point. For the first time since the project began, Matt had run out of answers. And when that happened, there was only one place left to turn. He needed Bugatti. The Veyron was back in the workshop following the ill-fated trip to Tunbridge Wells. The plan had been to drive it through Europe, a milestone that would have proved everything the rebuild had been working toward. Instead, it broke down before they even got close. The car was back. The problem wasn't solved. To look at it, you'd never know. The PPF wrap was immaculate. The custom satin bodywork looked sharp. The Vossen wheels divided opinion, as they always did, but they suited the car in a way that felt deliberate and considered. The engine bay was clean and well presented. On the surface, everything looked exactly as it should. But the car wouldn't run. It wouldn't drive. And nobody outside of Bugatti's own walls seemed to know why. That was the reality the rebuild had quietly arrived at. Not in a single dramatic moment, but gradually, through a slow accumulation of faults that refused to resolve cleanly. It had started with what looked like normal teething issues. After a rebuild of this scale and complexity, a few warning lights and minor sensor faults weren't surprising. You expect some settling in period. You expect to chase a few gremlins before everything stabilizes. That's part of the process. But these faults didn't settle. They shifted. One issue would disappear, and something else would take its place. A system would start behaving correctly, and then a completely unrelated module would throw up an error. And the pattern kept repeating in different forms, across different systems, with no single consistent cause that could be isolated and fixed. That inconsistency was what made it so difficult. Because a fault you can reproduce, you can diagnose. A fault you can diagnose, you can fix. But when the symptoms keep changing, when the car behaves one way in the morning and differently in the afternoon, when a fix appears to work until it suddenly doesn't, you lose the ability to trust your own conclusions. You start second-guessing work that was done correctly. You start pulling apart things that weren't the problem because you can no longer be certain what is. That's where the Veyron had arrived. Not broken in a straightforward way, but locked inside a pattern of faults that wouldn't hold still long enough to be properly understood. Matt had done everything that could reasonably be asked of someone in his position. Parts had been sourced that were genuinely difficult to find. Problems that looked like dead ends had been worked through. The rebuild had moved forward in stages, each one bringing the car closer to being road-ready, even when progress was hard-won and slow. But there are limits to what independent expertise can achieve on a car like the Veyron. Not limits of skill or commitment, limits of access. Because the Veyron is not a car that lends itself to conventional diagnosis. It doesn't fail in obvious ways. It doesn't give you a single broken component to identify and replace. It operates as a fully integrated system where one fault can trigger cascading behavior across multiple modules, and where understanding what's actually happening requires tools and data that simply don't exist outside the manufacturer's environment. At factory level, Bugatti has access to diagnostics that go deeper than anything available in an independent workshop. They have the original software configurations, the calibration data, the full electronic architecture of every system in the car. They can see things that no aftermarket tool can surface. And on a car as complex and as tightly integrated as the Veyron, that level of access isn't a luxury. It's the only way to truly understand what's going wrong. Which meant that, after everything, all the work, all the problem solving, all the months of keeping the project moving, Matt had reached the point where the rebuild couldn't continue without them. The decision to contact Bugatti was not a small one. And not just because of what it meant for the immediate fault. When Bugatti get involved with a car like this, they don't look only at the problem that triggered the call. They look at everything. Every system. Every sensor. Every module that has been accessed, modified, or replaced during the course of the rebuild. At factory level, nothing is treated in isolation because nothing in the Veyron operates in isolation. Every component feeds into a wider system, and every change made to the car has the potential to affect things that appear completely unrelated. That means the scope of their involvement doesn't stay narrow. It expands. And with it, so does the level of scrutiny. Because now it isn't just the current fault being evaluated. It's the entire rebuild. Every decision that was made. Every component that was fitted. Every workaround that was used when an exact factory replacement wasn't available. Every adaptation, every modification, every compromise that was part of keeping the project moving forward, all of it now sits under the lens of factory inspection. And that raises a question that nobody had needed to answer before this point. What if something doesn't pass? In an independent rebuild, a workaround is sometimes the only option. Parts for the Veyron are rare, expensive, and in some cases almost impossible to source through conventional channels. There are moments in a project like this where you adapt what's available or you don't move forward at all. Those decisions made sense in context. They were made with the best possible intentions and the best possible information available at the time. But factory inspection doesn't work in context. It works against specification, against calibration standards, against the exact procedures Bugatti requires for each system in the car. And if any part of the rebuild falls outside those parameters, even something that appeared to be working perfectly, it becomes a finding, something that needs to be addressed. That uncertainty now hangs over every element of the project. Not because the work was done carelessly, but because the standard being applied now is different from any standard that existed in the workshop. And that changes everything. It also changes something less tangible, but just as significant: the sense of control. Throughout the rebuild, even in its most difficult periods, the direction always came from Matt's side of the workshop. When something went wrong, he decided how to approach it. When a solution was needed, he found it, tested it, and moved forward. The project was his, not just in terms of ownership, but in terms of authority. Every call was his to make. That's no longer entirely the case. Once Bugatti are involved, the process changes fundamentally. Diagnosis goes through factory systems. Steps that would previously have been made on instinct and experience now require verification against manufacturer data. Decisions that used to take minutes now involve confirmation from systems and people outside the workshop. The rhythm of the project slows and becomes more structured, more measured, more constrained by a framework that Matt didn't design and can't fully control. That's not a criticism. It's the only way a car like the Veyron can be properly understood at this stage. But it represents a genuine shift in the nature of the rebuild, from something driven by independent problem-solving to something shaped, at least in part, by manufacturer input. And once that shift happens, it doesn't reverse. So that's where the rebuild now stands. At a turning point that nobody planned for, but that the car itself eventually made inevitable. Bugatti may well provide exactly the answers Matt has been searching for. They have the tools, the data, and the access to do what no one else can. That part of it could, in the best case, finally bring the project clarity it hasn't had in months. A definitive diagnosis. A clear path forward. A set of answers that actually hold up. But those answers will come with a full accounting of everything that has been done to the car. And some of what Bugatti find may push the project in directions that weren't anticipated. Parts of the rebuild may need to be revisited. Systems that seemed resolved may need to be reevaluated. The scope of what comes next might look very different from what anyone expected going in. Because this was never just a question of fixing a fault. It became a question of whether the rebuild, as it stands, can withstand the scrutiny of the people who built the car in the first place. And that question is about to get answered.